tu anakam ken aganyop gates at the beach akui. O ken me omkita pigs awania. Manu tu napi quex. Anime suda ka gates at the beach akui. Ogini, you can say in our language, we can say it's at the beach akui. And that means the first people of the land. Right now, I just acknowledged where we were and our territories and that we've been here for a very long time. And throughout Canada, when our elders speak of the land and where we are from, they always say, which means basically that we've been here for a very long time, and that the newcomers, we can say the newcomers that came here are really new to the land, hey? And therefore they don't have the identity to the land. They don't know the stories and the songs to the land. And so that's why they will always say that, is that we are people of this land. I often share this, is that we don't, that the First Nations, like around here in the Blackfoot territory, like my grandma was raised in a home that she didn't speak English. She just spoke Blackfoot. And she would talk about Inesti, which is the treaty. And she would say these things like, they got here and it was a treaty built so that they could live amongst us in peace, so that we won't attack them, because our warriors were still very strong during that time, hey? And many of us. And so where we signed the treaty in Siksika, treaty number 7, even that treaty it's not Treaty 7. A lot of people don't know that. It's the Blackfoot Treaty. But during that time, there was a lot of talk of, okay, should we war? Should we just get them out of our territory? Our elders at the time we were beaten down because our food source was diminished, the buffaloes. And so it was a very concerted effort by the newcomers to deplete our food source, And because our land, of course, is rich in resources, we didn't know about a lot of those approaches to land ownership and land, just basically land and resources, I guess to make a long story short is that we misinterpreted the treaty. We didn't know those approaches. We didn't think we owned the land, because how could you own like another being? How could you own your mother? You don't own anybody or anything. You're just part of it. So it was a clash of approaches and paradigms, and very funny in research. You'll see that too.
How do you like to introduce yourself to people when you meet them?
I just use my traditional name, and I did that actually in the beginning of when I spoke. I said,
And what does that mean?
Iskotoah'ka means chasing horses back to the camp.
Oh, okay.
And, my great uncle, he was in World War II. His name was Willie Wadsworth. And when I was born, my great grandmother who helped to raise me, that was her son who went to World War II, and he was Willie Wadsworth. There was 2 brothers that went to World War II, and the other one was Stephen. And so I was named after, of course, Willie, and I got his Blackfoot name at the same time. And so the names, Shelley, I know you know about names, is that when we get our name, our traditional names, that's our real name. The other English doesn't mean nothing. It's like we have to do that because of government imposition of processes, We don't care about our English names. We go by our real names, which is my real name.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, when you get a name, in our Blackfoot tradition, is you have to embody the person who carried that name before you. And so you have to be best of behavior and don't bring shame to that name, because it's a long history. That name could have been 10 generations back. It could go way back. I don't know how old the name is. All they told me was that it's an old name.
Mm-hmm.
So carry yourself accordingly.
So how do we know each other, Billy? I think I met you at some of the AIM High gatherings that we had.
That's where it was in Sukumi. And you did a presentation there.
Yeah, that's right. At one of the...
Your by your words and your presentation and the respect, your approaches. I like that.
Thank you, Billy. Thanks. I just would like for you to introduce your family too, because whenever we meet, you're always with your wife too, and then you like to talk about your grandsons.
Yeah, my wife and I, we've been together since we were 16 years old. And there's a whole story to that. I don't want to romanticize it or anything, but there's a whole story to. But moving forward, we finished school and stuff, and then had a daughter at 19 years old, very young. In fact, my wife Tisha was she was just graduating, and she walked they have the march in high school, and they did all that, and she was pregnant during the time. I remember feeling so bad. It was bad, but special at the same time. Just growing up working, that's all I knew. So I just worked construction till I was 25. I built grain bins, worked with moving companies, I worked concrete, I tied steel, I worked with rebar and ranching work. So I did a whole bunch of work just to do what I can to provide for my family. But when I hit 25, I decided to go back to school because one day I was shoveling, I was under tons of steel, and I was working at a dam, building the St. Mary's Dam, and there was rebar all above us. Hey, and we were under a layer of steel, and I was shoveling underneath under a puddle. And I remember looking down and shoveling underneath, getting the concrete clean, because when you pour concrete on top of concrete, it's got to be clean, right? And so I just remember saying, I ain't going to do this for the rest of my life. I'm not going to sit here in this pit in the cold, under steel, and on my hands and knees shoveling. And so that day I just said, shit, I'm going to go back to school. And so we went back, actually, my wife and I, when we were 25 years old, and still going to school, still students, but we got our BAs together in 2005. And since we got our degrees, I got my degree when I was 30, my bachelor's degree.
Billy sent me some pictures before our conversation started, and I'm just gonna let him guide us through his territory and some of the pictures that are important to him. What is this first picture in the background, Billy?
Waterton Lake. It's that's a very special place for us. Pre-settler, that's where we got one of our holy bundles. One of our creation bundles came out of that lake behind you. And that's the real name for that. We had those were names for thousands of years. The Blackfoots are dated 15,000 years. Those names are old. In fact, there's a PhD candidate. His name's Mike Brewstead. You might know him. That's what he's doing in his dissertation. He's renaming, like he's mapping and giving the names of the mountains. Collectively, they're called Motois'pitaiks, but they each have names. Hey, all those mountains. He's articling those and recording them and trying to get them back to being called their traditional names.
Wow. So he's revitalizing the names of all traditional places. That's amazing. Wow. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next picture.
Just in that picture there, just behind that, there's Ninastico, which is Chief Mountain. Many people know that place. Ninastico, lots of stories. I don't ever call our stuff legends because to me that's almost not real. And the stories that we were given and passed down to us, those are all real happenings. That's a powerful place right there. Hey, there's a lot to it. But yeah, that in that area right where I'm at is our blood reserve timber limit. So we own land up in the mountains. I go up there and I hunt moose and elk and deer and all kind of, I grew up born and raised hunter, and I know how to process and
I'm going to show a hunting picture, and then maybe you can talk about who taught you how to hunt.
I shot that about 4 or 5 years ago. I was with my buddy Brooke, and we went up in the timbers and all that elk in. Of course, sometimes you can call them in with those bugles, elk bugles, but I called this guy in with a cow call. You know? Yeah, I called him in and got him, harvested him. I have those antlers mounted, and I have them out at my dad's place, and that's my favorite gun in the world. That's a Tikka 7mm Remington mag. That's my favorite gun. But that elk there, we ate them, and we don't waste meat. Okay? So consequently, when you don't waste meat, you gotta work, which means you don't leave anything but the guts. So you gotta carry everything out of there.
What is this photo of?
That's a teepee. There's a society member that just lives down the valley from me. His name is David, and his last name is Spotted Eagle, and he's what you call Iitskina, and that means he's a member of our Horn Society, which is the highest society that you can attain and get to in your lifetime with the Blackfoots, with the Bloods. Anyways, he needed help one day to put that up. He was having a ceremony, and so I happened to be there. And in the evening time, that is the sunset towards the east.
Yeah.
And him and I and some other guys got together and we put up this teepee, and really so beautiful that day.
Okay, so we're gonna go with your grandson. Cute little guy right here. Okay, so how old is your grandson now?
He's 2 years old. He was 2 in October, and he's hitting his terrible too. So everything, he owns it. He wants everything, and he's the boss. His name is Ashkidian, and that's in the Dene language, the Navajo language. His dad is half from the Navajo people and half Cree from the Piapot Nation. His mom's from Piapot, dad's from the Navajo Nation. That word there, Ashkidian, that's a traditional Navajo name, which means holy boy. And so it's a very prominent name as well with the Blackfoots. So when he's in Blackfoot communities, we call him Motois'pitaiks, which is holy boy. And they live with us. I'm so lucky that they're here with us.
Let's talk a little bit about your research now.
Like I said, since 2005, since I graduated, I got picked up from the tribe. I was on self-government agreement research tables and different research projects and restorative justice. I was a minor chief councilman for the Blood Tribe for one term. Last year, just re-registered into my second master's to finish. Now it's taking a look at perceptions of the opioid problem from a Blackfoot perspective, analyzing that. Kind of, it's like a research tool. I'm working for the Chiefs right now. It's been really impactful, the stuff that I've been learning and doing this, writing this thesis.
It's grounded in Blackfoot philosophy. Can we talk a little bit about what that means? Research that's grounded in your philosophy?
We're gonna have to like I always, because being a Blackfoot thinker, my first language was Blackfoot, and I just think Blackfoots, I have to like back up when as soon as you get to research, pre-contact, our sources of data, our data sources to our research was the land. The land, very much, you had to create a really deep relationship with the land and understand the land to survive. Your data sets were the land and the survival methods, and how did you live and survive. And so the application of the knowledge, the research application, is living. It's like continued perpetuation of a life way in a people, okay? And so it's a very big thing, and it's very important. And so our data sets were the land, of course, but also the spirit, the dream. And you put all out those research, those data sets together, and you formulate a story of how those relationships work together. When we go on our fasts and attain knowledge from a heightened consciousness, you attain value of things. The research from where we're at today, it's like a clash of two worlds. What is this for? From the Indian mind,
Yeah.
when we see the student come, or the PhD, the professor who wants to do a research project, that's hard for us to understand. Hey, like, why do you want to know? Why do you want to, what are you going to do with that once you learn it from us? Hey, you don't even live in our community. What are you going to do with that? And so it's really abstract. It's hard to understand. I'll just say it's like the white man's mind is really difficult for us to sometimes understand. And a lot of times it's created harms. Research has created harms over the years. So you think about those early ethnographers and their tacit infrastructures that they applied into the way they thought we should have lived and were living, damaged us and harmed us and created stereotypes, eh? And so over this last 100 years, with the Blackfoots, maybe 150 years has been the outside external influence to us, eh? We're still trying to understand it, eh? There's still fluent speakers where I'm from, even speak English. They don't care about it, eh? They just want to live. the way they've always lived. That in itself is the problem with researchers. And then me going and learning the white man system in academia, I'm trying to get this degree. And so they tell me, okay, we'll study First Nation perspectives on why or why not they vote in the federal political or federal provincial elections. And I'm like, I just laugh in the back of my mind when somebody asks me to do these research projects. But I'll play the game. I'll say, okay, I'll go get it. I'll go tap. I know what they're gonna say, but yeah, I'll go ask them. And so I get my recorder and my ethics release form, and I say, okay, what do you think of this? I have to say it in my language. This is how I'm explaining the whole process. I'll just say it in English. This is how these white people are thinking. They want to know how come you do or you don't vote in the federal and provincial elections. I don't know what they're going to do with that, but they want to know what we're thinking. And that's all you can say, hey?
What is the response that you get from your community members when you say that? Like, there's no real application to this. We just want to know. What do they say?
They don't want to disrespect me because I'm a member. They just sit there and there's those elders are stern, hey? Like they're very stern and they'll say it how they think. I think that me being the community member, they'll humor it too.
Yeah.
If it was a white person coming out and asking them that, they'd probably just get out of my house. Don't come to see me on that stuff. On the research topic alone, why or why not do First Nations not vote in elections is because we don't view ourselves as Canadians.
Yeah.
We signed a treaty with the British Crown, and Canada's didn't even get sovereignty until 1982, till the repatriation of the Constitution. Canada's just a state to us. It's just a delegated state. Our treaty that settled this land was with the British Crown, eh? And even that was misinterpreted. The short answer is first Blackfoots. I can't speak for any other people, but the Blood tribe here, for the most part, they don't even think of themselves as Canadians.
When you're talking about how elders or your community members humor you when you ask research questions, I've been through that process too. They don't directly answer you, and then you're thinking, did I do something wrong? What's going on here? And then when you go back and you think about it, it's no, they just don't care. They don't want to participate. It's not going to benefit them. That's why they need to be in charge of the research question or what they want to investigate.
Very true. And then there's a thing about data ownership, like who owns it after. If it's coming from our community and our ancestors, that knowledge, we own it. You do not own it.
I'm really interested in talking about OCAP with you because you used to work for the First Nations Information Governance Center. I
had just finished my term of council with the Blood tribe in 2016. I took a little break. Maybe about 6-8 months, I stayed home. I worked on myself because it's a tough place to get into politics. And so I took some time out for myself and I just, gathered my thoughts and what's my next project in life, eh? I consulted the Creator, I prayed, and I trained a lot, worked out and my physical self and got myself strong and did a lot of ceremonies. And I just asked the Creator, what's my next step? I got a lead from a friend of a friend that the First Nations Information Governance Center was looking for a researcher, policy analyst. I started that position and I didn't know about those principles of OCAP, ownership, control, access, and possession. Didn't really know about them. I really delved into the research world. I knew about research, but I really was forced to speak about and understand who owns data on any and all research projects with respect to sovereign nation. With respect to a sovereign, like we see ourselves as sovereign. Why? Because we signed a legally obligating document with an external government. And by virtue of signing a treaty, you are recognizing the sovereignness of another party that you are wanting to sign a treaty with. So we just grow up with that. And so we're sovereign Blackfoot people. When you want to research us, and because of the historical damages that research has done to us, because there was no legalities before, we are creating our own legalities now. And so we're making researchers become accountable to what they're doing. And we own the knowledge. So we're creating data sharing agreements and saying, when you are done, we will say if you can share this or not, because it's from us. We own it, not you. And so when you have money to research this stuff, you give it to us and we will administer that money for you because it's our stuff. So that's the kind of research approach that I began to embody. It was empowering to me. Why? Because I always knew it innately, but I had no English language to fight with it.
Let's talk about ethical relationships in Indigenous research. What does that mean to you?
Best way I can explain it, one time I guest lectured in an Indigenous studies class at the U of L. I got invited to talk about Indigenous perspectives on the treaty. I really drove it home, that class. It was an hour. I think it was a 2-hour class. And I came in, I was like, I'm going to tell these guys, they got to know what our perspectives are. And they're going to leave that room. They're going to understand what we are and why we do what we do. In the broad scope of research, the way we see the world, the way we see, I guess you could call it Motois'pitaiks, like First Nation or Blackfoot ways. We see, it's like we pull back and we see from the very big. And so it's like you're in the sky looking at things. Why? Is because you have to understand the relationship of things. How are things put together, and how, if you do something here, it could affect something over here. You approach the world and life from that perspective of my actions, my thoughts, and my words can affect something. Eh? They have causal powers. The butterfly effect. What I do can really affect something. And so coming from that spiritual approach and that everything's alive, like Creator made all of us and all of everything. I'm just sharing the Blackfoot ways with you. Yeah. Just for knowledge, just so that people can understand. When you say Iskotoah'ka, that you're saying the source of life, right? The source. When you say, sometimes you could only metaphorically speak towards a creator that's creating. And we don't know what it is, male, female. We don't know what it is. That's why sometimes in other languages they say a mystery. We don't know. All we know is manifestations of what the creator is creating. And so if the creator created me and you, if the creator created the soil we walk on and all things underneath and above, then I better respect all things underneath and above, you and me. I better figure out how to perpetuate life. And that relational network has to be respectful. Why? Because Creator made me and you, made me in that mountain behind you. So why would I disrupt a life way in a natural process when, I like digging in the ground and digging oil, and it's destruction under the guise of development and all that new perspective of bigger, better, faster, stronger. It's a sickness. It's a sickness that was born way back, and it was a Pandora's box that opened, and what came out of it was this commodification of all things and separated the spirit from everything. And so you see that in research, you see that in everything, where the spirit got taken out, the feeling, the love, it was taken out, and a rock was just a rock. And that's what people need to understand in research. And so I'll back up a little bit. When I did the presentation on treaty making, it was like everything I step on in my day, everything I do, I have to realize that has consequences, how I think, feel, act, and speak. And so if I'm walking and trying to be in this space of respect, then when I write a treaty, the reason why we have our pipes is because our pipe is, when we smoke, that was what the Creator gave us for ceremonies. And so when you smoke and you're smoking the pipe, you're releasing that energy and that those words and good feelings. And so when it goes up, it goes to Creator. It's carried out and it's carried around. And so when you smoke that sacred pipe, you do not lie. Why? Is because in our language we say "Iskotoah'ka," that means things come back to you. And so when you do positive things, Iskotoah'ka, that means good things will come back. Goodness just will keep coming because you're just in this place of goodness. Vice versa, when you do bad things, Iskotoah'ka, that bad thing will come back to you. So the English word karma, but karma is really you can attach it, and it's really synonymous with Iskotoah'ka. That means things come around, come back to you. So being in this whole place of respect and feeling, and we have to like think about having respect for everything in our children. Those that aren't born yet, we have to think about. Hey, so you're thinking about generations after you, to be born into a beautiful place that you were lucky to be born into, right? Not to just be destructful and wreck things. And that's where we're going right now, is we're wrecking the world and the air and everything. Maybe that's why we have the virus. Maybe we're the virus to Mother Earth. Maybe that's what she's doing, is getting rid of us. Anyways, I went into the class. I was talking about treaty, and I explained all this process of relations and respect, and that when we smoked the pipe, it was a sacred agreement between two sovereign governments. And so when we smoked the pipe, we weren't going to lie, because Creator was watching and listening. When we had the pipe, we smoked and they smoked. To us, it was a peace treaty. Sign this thing and we won't attack you, because we had the ability to in those days to wipe them out, but we didn't, because we smoked the pipe with them. And so they can live in harmony with us, amongst us, in our territories that Creator gave us, and we won't harm them. And as a result of them living with us, they will provide to us certain things, like pay for our teachers and our education, and a lot of other resource extraction came after treaties afterwards, like the Natural Resource Transfer Agreement. There's a lot of legislative things that happened that twisted the early intents of that treaty from our perspective. We did not know what cede and surrender means. Why? Is because you can't give away something you don't own. I can't give you away. I can't give anybody away because I don't own anybody or anything. So I don't own Mother Earth. So when we signed that treaty, there was a lot of sneaky wordage in that language. Why? Because that external government wanted land and resources. That's how the powers of the world grew in power, as they acquired land and resources, right? We did not know, our ancestors in that time did not know about that mentality. And as a result, the interpretation of the treaty became very much that we interpret it two different ways, because we're two different people, two different tacit infrastructures. And yeah, when I was done that, they didn't want to leave, those students, when I was done that class. They were like, they wanted to visit more and they wanted to learn more. Because gee, this guy is talking about, why does he care about me? He doesn't know me, but I do, because those are my values and ethics systems that I come from. Is I have to care about all people and all things. And so it's my responsibility. Yeah.
When we talk about ethical relationships and building ethical research relationships, there's a lot of mistrust right now from Indigenous communities, and rightfully so, because of helicopter research and exploitative research and the ways that researchers even think that don't align with Indigenous values and practices. How can we start to rebuild that relationship? And that's part of the reason why I'm doing this, is because you can't lump all researchers together. A lot of us do have some really good intentions for Indigenous communities, and we are Indigenous researchers. We know how our communities work. How are we going to build that relationship again?
It's going to take time, hey? And as you said, we're at different levels of understanding of that research world. And so now I work with elders who understand research ethics, who've dealt with researchers, and just want to help too, hey? And it's bridging two worlds, but the bridge isn't built yet. So we're in the process of making that bridge, hey? So we could think about it that way. We don't know. I can't give you one answer to answer that question of how do we reconcile two worlds, because reconcile implies that there was a good relationship before. It's conciliation is what we should be doing, is conciliation, eh? It's just creating that beginning relationship of two different worlds, eh? So me and you, we're agents of that process because we have gone to that white man world, understood it, and we're coming back to help our people to help to understand it as well. And so that's what we're doing in our research projects, is creating that bridge. Eh? It's not completed. So what do? Well, for us, when you visit us, that's creating conciliation. When you visit and you come to our ceremonies and you don't judge us, you eat with us, you invite us to your home, we'll invite you to our home. That's creating that relationship, you know? We pray together.
If there's anything on your heart or anything that you're interested in talking about for research or for like up and coming young Indigenous researchers.
I guess with respect to academia, Western academia, I didn't even know my history, to tell you the truth, till I went to university, and I understood a little bit of, I'll back that up. I didn't know the ramifications of a colonial relationship. I didn't know that history and how it happened and came to be. All I felt was this lump in my throat the whole time growing up. Why couldn't I hug my parents, my mom and dad, and say I love you? There was something in between us, and that was because my mom and dad went to residential school and we're not taught to love. They both, I always tell people, my mom and dad can't hear out of one ear good. Why? It's because being slapped for speaking their language. So they were traumatized at a young age. And so when they were raising me, I'm not afraid to say this, and my dad isn't afraid either. He drank a lot. Work hard, ranch, try hard, and make your money and pay for your bills and take care of your family. But there was this little bit of dysfunction on the other side because nobody's perfect. And so he had that alcohol problem and he drank a lot. But he quit that when I was 16, my dad quit drinking. And so he really showed me, my mom didn't drink. So my dad really showed me somebody can quit and somebody can persevere through a traumatic event. Okay. And so since I got older and learned and shared with my parents, and nothing was bad. It was just that there was this little gap, a little thing that I couldn't put my hand on, and I didn't know I had that hurt in my body, and I had a lump in my throat growing up. Is shoot, trauma happened to our people. The colonial imposition happened to my people, and that's why we act out a certain way. And so we know through epigenetics that has fired up certain genes in our systems that have made us act a certain way, in a traumatic way. Once you begin to understand that, then you can begin the process of healing. And that happened to me when I went to university, and I really said, holy shit. The colonizers came, we didn't know what they were after, and what they did to us hurt. And we are still in a process of healing. And so once you get to a place where you understand that has been historical trauma done to you, that happened to you, then you can begin that process of healing. But if you don't know, how come my parents don't hug me and say I love you? Then you're going to think it's you when it's not you. It's a result of a historical trauma, right? Those are ramifications of that trauma that happened a long time ago. And so once you can understand that, then you can forgive and say, oh, I forgive you, mom and dad, for not doing that. We can work through this now. And so now it's a world that's knowing that historical colonial process that happened was able to grow and to help. And it's also a burden as to know that we shouldn't be acting like this, that this isn't us. We have so many ways in our history that are so powerful and loving and reciprocal and all that. All we need to do is look a little ways back and know that's there and tap into it again and reconnect. That's what I want to share with young people now, is just go and see an elder, go and see another young person that went through the same thing as you. Listen to their story and grow. Don't stay in this dysfunction. Don't stay in that turmoil of dysfunction and not knowing. You got a mind, you learn, you listen. That's why you have ears. You listen and you learn. Okay? And so I always want to tell young people that the reason why we're like this, don't be ashamed of it. But don't be ashamed of it. We didn't do this to ourselves. It happened to us. That's why we're like this. Okay? And so now it's like when you grow and heal and all that, the world opens up. Then you just become another warrior.